Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are setting off on an absolutely incredible virtual journey high into the peaks of the Indian subcontinent. We're going to be exploring this amazing space where ancient myth literally collides head-on with modern climate realities. We'll be unpacking a story of absolute devotion, heartbreaking destruction, and ultimately a massive effort to build a sustainable future. So here's the core question we're answering today. How exactly did a millennia-old foot trail winding through the treacherous Himalayas trigger a modern ecological disaster? And on the flip side, how does this very same path hide some of India's most profound geographical and scientific mysteries? By the end of our time together, we'll trace this path from vast mythologies to harrowing disasters, and we'll eventually arrive at a massive, eco-conscious rebirth. All right, part one, the foundation. The four divine abodes. Let's get right into it. Okay, to really understand this journey, let's clear up a major point of confusion right out of the gate regarding the scale of these epic pilgrimages. When people talk about the Char Dham, they're actually often mixing up two entirely different circuits. There's the original All India Char Dham, which is this massive continental circuit encompassing Puri in the east, Ramaswaram in the south, Dwarka in the west, and Badrinath in the north. And then there's the Chota Char Dham, the small Char Dham. This is an exclusively high-altitude circuit entirely within the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand, featuring Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath, and Badrinath. It's this high-altitude Himalayan circuit that we're really zooming in on today. But before we hike up the mountains, the sheer structure of that original All-India circuit is totally worth a closer look. The legendary monk Adi Shankara organized these four sites into what's basically a monumental matrix. He aligned each site not just with a compass direction, but with specific headquarters or matas, ancient epics known as yugas, and the four sacred Vedas. Honestly, it's an absolute masterclass in using physical geography to map out a spiritual theology. Moving on to part two, the grueling path, walking the ancient trail. 1,170. That is the sheer, daunting length in kilometers of the ancient foot trail through the Himalayas. Just think about that. Before modern roads, pilgrims traversed this massive distance entirely on foot, navigating crumbling ridges, freezing rivers, and dense forests just to reach the four shrines. Now, this quote really stops you in your tracks. Historically, pilgrims undertaking this grueling trek didn't even know if they'd return alive. In fact, many were so certain they wouldn't that they literally performed their own death rituals, their own shroud, before even leaving home. It was considered a one-way trip of absolute surrender. I mean, it really showcases a visceral danger and a level of absolute devotion that's kind of hard for us to comprehend today. And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme hardships of the trail. Decades ago, a wandering ascetic known as Baba Kali Kamli realized pilgrims were literally starving to death on the mountains. So he set up a network of rest stops called chadis. The daily rations they provided were incredibly sparse: 500 grams of flour, 100 grams of lentils, 10 grams of salt, and 10 grams of chili. That's it, the whole shebang. That was the lifeline created just to keep travelers alive in one of the harshest environments on Earth. Which brings us to part three, the climax, the 2013 Kedarnath tragedy. Let's walk chronologically through the terrifying natural sequence of events that unfolded in June 2013. On June 13th, the Indian Meteorological Department actually issued clear heavy rain warnings. By June 15th, a really rare convergence of the southwest monsoon and westerly disturbances locked over Uttarakhand, unleashing torrential rain. And then, on June 17th, the tipping point. The Chorabari glacial lake above the Kedarnath shrine collapsed. Millions of tons of water and debris came crashing down the Mandakini Valley. 385.1. That's the rainfall in millimeters recorded over just 3 days. To put that into perspective, that represents a staggering 440% increase over normal levels for the region. The mountains simply could not hold that volume of water. But here's the absolutely crucial point. This wasn't just an act of God. Human interference played a massive role here. Authorities ignored the initial weather warnings. Unregulated construction choked the riverbanks. Deforestation and reckless riverbed mining weakened the valleys. On top of that, there were 680 incomplete dams altering the natural drainage, and the dumping of animal carcasses obstructed water flows. Human activity undeniably turned a severe storm into a tragedy that claimed over 4,000 lives. The pressure on this region was already nearing a breaking point. Between the year 2000 and 2010, tourism in the state exploded from 1.11 crore to 3.11 crore visitors. That is nearly a 300% increase in just a single decade. The fragile Himalayan ecosystem was buckling under the weight of this unregulated tourism boom long before the rains even began. Now, let's pivot to part 4, the rebirth, eco-conscious development. The good news is the region answered this terrible wake-up call. The modern recovery effort is driven by a very structured philosophy, the 3PCH formula. It stands for the preservation, protection, and promotion of environment, culture, and heritage. Every new project, whether it's a retaining wall, a pathway, or a building, must strictly adhere to these 3 pillars. It's all about ensuring a disaster of that magnitude never happens again. One of the most striking examples of this philosophy is the Smriti Vana Memorial. It's a park built to remember the victims, but what's truly incredible is that it was constructed entirely out of the natural boulders that crashed down during the landslides. They didn't import synthetic building materials, they transformed the very instruments of destruction into a quiet, native place of remembrance. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how military-grade technology was used to finally solve a centuries-old sanitation and waste crisis on the mountain. Today, 323 biodigestible toilets, originally designed by India's Defense Research and Development Organization, the DRDO, have been installed along the high-altitude trek. They use special bacteria to anaerobically digest waste, keeping the sacred mountains completely free of contamination. A real game-changer. Finally, we arrive at part 5, the mystical destination, myths, mysteries, and mana. Take the village of Mana, located just past the Badrinath temple near the Tibetan border. For decades, it was known as India's last village. But in 2022, it was officially reclassified as India's first village. It's a powerful rebranding, establishing Mana not as the end of the road, but as the gateway to the deepest, oldest secrets of the Himalayas. And right near the temple lies an ongoing geological wonder, an extreme sensory contrast. Picture this. You have the freezing, sub-zero temperatures of the surrounding Himalayan glaciers, but right below the shrine is the topped Kund spring, which bubbles with thermal waters at a scalding 55 degrees Celsius year-round. Pilgrims take a mandatory dip in this boiling water while surrounded by snow. It's an incredible geothermal marvel that completely defies the freezing climate around it. Now, here is a fascinating anomaly that breaks a universal rule of Hindu worship. In almost every Hindu temple across the globe, blowing a conch shell is a standard, highly auspicious ritual. But at Badrinath, blowing the conch is strictly banned. So why is that? Well, let's see how this builds a brilliant bridge between ancient religious rules and highly practical survival science. Mythologically, the ban is out of respect. The sound is said to disturb Lord Vishnu's deep mountain meditation. But the scientific reality? The temple sits in an echo-prone valley surrounded by unstable glaciers. The high-frequency sound waves of a conch shell can easily trigger deadly avalanches, so the myth actually enforces the safety protocol. Pretty smart, right? Just nearby, there's another brilliant fusion of landscape and legend. The mighty Saraswati River flows powerfully into Mana, and then suddenly it just disappears underground. The local mythology explains this unique hydrology with a great little micro-story. Lord Ganesh was sitting in a cave here trying to write the epic Mahabharata, and the rushing river was making too much noise, so he cursed the Saraswati to flow silently underground. It's such an amazing way to encode geological facts into memorable stories. We'll end today on an extraordinary prophecy that looks to the future of this changing landscape. The Badrinath temple sits exactly between the Nar and Narayana mountain ranges. According to ancient texts, these mountains are slowly moving closer together. The legend states that one day they're going to collide, sealing off the Badrinath shrine forever, and forcing the deity to relocate to a new, undiscovered shrine called Bhavishabhadri. It leaves us with a profound thought. As the tectonic plates shift and the geography continues to evolve, what new mysteries will the Himalayas force us to discover next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you next time.